Welcome back to Chris in Retro. Today's video is going to be about being an advocate for yourself, owning your own journey relative to your recovery and your careers and what you do with your life. And I hope to share some things today that are some examples of my experiences, but also some tips that may inspire you to think about your approach a little bit differently. You know, we've got a healthcare system right now and a treatment system right now that is overwhelmed with volume. Um, you know, we promote a lot. We talk a lot about overdose deaths, but we don't talk about the population that's still behind all those deaths that is much larger than the ones that actually die. Many people overdose multiple times before the one that actually takes their life. Then you factor in alcoholics and people with alcoholism like I have, and the perpetual cycle of that until you get to the point that you actually stop. There's few that seem to move beyond it. And those that do seem to be serious about it, but it's still burden to the system. It's a lot of work to do, and they're massively different behaviors that come out of depending on the substance of choice. It's not to say one addict has a lesser or easier time or anything else. It's just the behaviors seem to demonstrate themselves differently. In this system right now, we have short staffing. We have unqualified staff. We have exhausted staff and irritable staff in some places. We have well-meaning people that are working at being overworked because they'll show up for every shift because their heart is in the right place. We have limitations in the way that the healthcare is provided and reimbursed. We have stigma over those people that seem to keep coming back and not taking their recovery seriously, but we do start to change our behavior towards them. And I've noticed that in the treatment community and how they treat others. I'll share with you guys a screen right now. I think probably now is an appropriate time to do this. CDC put out this information. I found it very interesting. So if you look at what's here, this is the 12-month provisional counts of drug overdose in the United States. And this is 2024, January 2024, this was reported. Now, if you look back at January 2015, we're at about 48,000 was predicted. We ended up with 47,000. That continued to climb. It flattened out here between 2018 and 2019, going into 2020, and then it started to climb rapidly. It climbed. We ended up with 100,000 predicted and 99,000 in 2021. We ended up with 110,000 predicted and ended up 108,000 dead in 2022. And then it flattened out in 23 a little bit. Then we ended up with 112 predicted and another 2,000 dead. 110,000 ended up by dying by April 23. And we started to see a fall off towards the end. We had a little bit of a reduction and started to go back down in the right direction. But it's still, in January, it was 102,000 dead. Now, they seem to always predict a little bit more, which is fine. But that's what we're seeing. Now, I'm going to make a comment about that in my observations, but here's what's predicted in the United States. So anything that's in blue is good. Anything in yellow is bad. So here they can predicted in Oregon, Washington, and Nevada, they predicted some problems here where they were going to have massive increases in overdose deaths, 31%, 28%, 29%, 23%. Those were all massive increases in terms of percentages. California, they predicted a 1% increase. And all these other states, they predicted increases as well. Everything else, they showed a decrease, and significant decrease in Nebraska of 27%. These are predicted. Now, what was actually reported is a slight change. Now, North Carolina did not report correctly. It was incomplete data, and they're reporting 37% reduction. California actually saw a reduction. Nevada, Oregon, Washington, they weren't as bad, but they're still bad. They're still over 20% growth in overdose deaths. Texas, about 1%. None of them compare to Nevada, Oregon, and Washington in terms of the growth of overdose deaths. DC, nation's capital, 8.7% increase. Now, keep in mind, that's a couple hundred population. So my question on this is really, where's this data being pulled from? And there's a few things to consider. One is not everybody that dies from overdose death is accounted for. In fact, many are people in the street that people don't even know who they are. So they die in ditches and in creeks and in abandoned buildings, and they don't find them for years later. They die in abandoned restaurants we've seen around here. We've seen people dying in the street corners and in between buildings. They're not accounted for in this number. I think this number is coming from people that were in treatment, ended up bypassing, and they show up here. Now, I don't know that for sure, but it just seems to me with this number, any reduction on this means they changed who they're counting. Narcan and all these other drugs help people stay alive a little bit longer. But with some of the new cocktails that are coming out relative to cocaine and heroin, it's not just fentanyl and all the other things that are going into these drugs. the xylazine and all this stuff. Fentanyl doesn't, or Narcan and bupropion does not help with that. It's just, they're just new drugs that we have to deal with. Now, why am I getting all this drug data? Because I want to show you that even in the best of times, we're still seeing 102,000 people dead as of January, and we believe the number is growing this year. That's dead. So all the people that are in the treatment program that aren't dead, they're all still fighting this thing and heavily burdening the system. Now, a few things that I've observed as I've gone through this process multiple times, and when I was a peer in an emergency department for a while, I saw that with the peers in the emergency. I saw it with clients in the emergency department. I've seen it with my fiance. I've seen it in my life, and that is how we're received by treatment. So if there's a number of relapses or reoccurrences in your addiction, they have a tendency to not take you as seriously, and you end up by being processed as paperwork. If you start messing up on your scripts, they don't take you as seriously and are as willing to advocate for you because they put you in the lumps of the masses that don't get better. So how do we break that cycle? Well, I think it really comes down to being your own advocate and knowing a few things. They're overwhelmed, and there's a lack of understanding in some cases. So I've been in family court situations where I've heard attorneys talk about somebody doing methamphetamine when in fact it's not methamphetamine. Their test came back as an amphetamine, and it was Adderall that was prescribed. But the characterization of this person was that person was doing methamphetamine, and was stated that way, and had to be corrected because it was going on the record that this person was doing meth, and that person's never done meth in their life. They've done other illicit drugs, but not that. So there's a lack of understanding, and that's everywhere through the system. So everything from child protective services to anything relative to public services, or your doctors, or your drug courts. Even a lot of cases, people are involved in drug court don't understand the nuance of addiction. They're just been assigned to that role and probably have good hearts and are trying to do the right thing, but they may not know all the details. The second thing is that volume generalization. And what I mean by that is when you have a group of people and things that you have to deal with, it's real easy to lump everybody into one thing and just kind of treat it as all one thing and turn it into a manufacturing line just to deal with the volume. And we see that a lot. So how do we break that cycle? I really believe it boils down to what you do for you as an advocate for you. When we're in the throes of addiction, a lot of times we want to get better, but we still want our drug of choice. So what we'll do is we'll put the onus on other people to help us get better because we really don't have the grit or the will to do it ourselves. We're not at that I will do it. We're not at that declaration point yet. So what we'll do is we'll put the onus on other people. Well, invariably, people are not going to own our lives as much as we're going to own our lives because they don't want it as much as we do. They may care about us and they may want good things for us, but they certainly are not going to own it as much as we do when we want it back. So of course, there's going to be shortcomings. And of course, there's going to be things where they're going to generalize us, especially when they don't see the work. So what does personal advocacy look like? Well, it looks like this. When you see something in your treatment that doesn't match up what's going to meet your needs, you stand for it and you fight for what you need. And I'm not saying it's drug seeking, but if somebody tries to change a script percentage or script volume on you, and you had history with that not working, you need to stand up and not accept that as what it is and explain yourself in a calm, professional manner that says, look, I've experienced this before. It hasn't worked for me. I'd like to stay here because I'm not at a point in my recovery where I feel like I can mess with this. Will you please and make sure that I'm good for now on this one? And a lot of times your prescriber will hear you and work with you. It's when you're silently accepting it and then go fuss about them everywhere else and what they did to you, that's not helping you. Advocate at the point that you're being prescribed. The other thing is when it comes to medical treatment in general, when you go into a hospital and somebody sees your chart, around here we have a centralized chart system. So if you go to one hospital versus another, they're going to see your whole history and they may treat you with stigma. Advocate for yourself. And if you are actually in recovery and doing better, posture yourself as that person in recovery. It'll be shocking how different you are as a person in front of them having a conversation than what your chart says. Now, the worst thing you can do is blow up and have a crazy fit on somebody because then they're going to see it's just an addict. But if you're actually having a conversation that's advocacy for what you need for your life, and you're doing it in a calm, professional manner, and talking, hearing them back and hearing their response back, fielding their questions, fielding their concerns, and redirecting that so they understand what you're trying to do to advocate for yourself, I think that you'll find a lot of success in those conversations in the medical community. Now, I've got plenty of examples where people have not advocated and they've gotten themselves in a real bind, because then it spins into a story that is not true. But it started with you not standing for your position and explaining where you are. Now, if you're in active use, you're going to have a hard time defending yourself. So it's really important that you stay on a recovery path. Now, it's not perfection. Remember, we're not striving for perfection. We're moving along a spiritual line. We're trying to do the very best we can with what we have and what we can do at that point. We're trying to do the very best in this 24 hours that we can be, and we're not going to settle for anything less. But we're going to bring all of us to the table in a way that says, I'm here and I'm present, and I'm going to do this work. That's all anybody can ask for you. The other thing is a court system. When I was getting my last sentencing, it was a scary day because I had screwed up and missed the court day the day before. I went the wrong day. I'd transposed 2 dates. I had a family court and a criminal court sentencing, and then I flip-flopped them. And so I ended up by thinking I was showing up for criminal sentencing, and I ended up that was the day my family court was, and I missed the criminal sentencing. So when I walked through security, they had a bench warrant for me and arrested me. So I was in front of the judge by the afternoon that day. And at that point in time, the DA was pushing for me to get 1 to 3 years in prison. It originally started at 7 years because of the history that I'd had and the recent history I'd had and the compacted history and how out of control I was with my drinking. But it's very obviously addiction. If you looked at my history before that, and then that season, it was very clear that alcohol was driving a lot of my decision-making. But this DA really wanted me to go to prison. And was convincing, very convincing and compelling. And I only had a public defender who was a complete turd and didn't stand up for me at all. He just read a letter from my treatment provider and said, they said he's doing really good in treatment. Well, you know what? Who cares? It doesn't mean squat. What am I actually doing for life? And all these people I put in danger with my behavior. So I asked to speak, and the judge honored me to speak. And I explained what my position was. And I said, I understand that he has certain obligations based on the crimes that I've committed, and I have certain accountabilities that I have to hold to. However, I believe that the work I'm doing and the commitment I've had and the history long-term that I have in my life demonstrates my ability to get better. And on top of it, based on my recent history, advocate and help others. By having a chance to exercise my voice, my 1 to 3 years was, while the DA was still pushing that after what I spoke about, the judge reluctantly gave me 6 months in county jail and gave me 5 years post-release. My behavior on the post-release, I got that cut in half. So I got off in 2.5 years of post-release. These are all things that happened because, number one, I made a promise and I kept the promise. So we put our toe on the line. So part of advocacy for ourselves is not just popping off when somebody does something that we don't like. That's not advocacy. That's just acting like you did before and honestly validating people's concerns about you. What is important is that, first of all, you make the commitment that you're going to go forward and you're going to live a sober life. And if you say you're going to help others, by all means do it. If you say you're going to go to a treatment program, do it. If you're going to go to a group session in a treatment program, do it. If they say that you don't have to go to a group session and you sign up for that group session, it's still a promise you've made and you still have to go to group because it's showing consistency, it's showing responsibility and that you meet your obligations. So first you make a promise because that's showing the commitment, and then you keep that promise and that shows you're serious. By doing that over and over again, now the people around you are less concerned about what you once were. They're deeply caring and understanding that you're not part of the crowd that they've been bucketing you in. You're different. You're somebody that actually is being serious about what you want to do. It's the most important thing about personal advocacy. And then the delivery. The delivery of your advocacy has to be based on facts. It has to be based on, what it is that you see. And also there can be some passion behind it that says, I believe so much in where I'm at. And you can demonstrate trajectory changes and you can demonstrate decision-making changes and how your mind is thinking differently. All these things, if you're really in a season of recovery, you'll be convincing because people will see it. Sam has struggled with her addiction. I saw a fundamental change in her life the day that she said, I just can't take it anymore. I need rehab. When she said that, it was probably one of the most emotional moments I've had in a long time. And the reason for that is because I know what that language means. That's a declaration. It's a declaration that I understand my life is unmanageable and I can't take it anymore. That's where I was on September 11th of 2017. I just couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't take it anymore. I needed to lay down my arms. And at that point in time, I gave it all to my higher power. And I said, every stinking thing I can't control, man, I'm going to lay it at your feet. And I'm ready to go. I just trust that you're taking care of what I can't handle and this overwhelming feeling that I'm having. And I'll just accept what comes my way. And I'm going to do the right thing, no matter where I'm at or what I'm doing. And it was a very powerful moment for me, but it was a declaration. At that point, I will get better. I didn't want to anymore. I will. That's important. So basically where I'm at with this whole thing is it really boils down to our consistent behavior. It boils down to us actually delivering on what we say we're going to do. So this advocacy thing, when we're advocating for ourselves, we cannot expect others to consistently and constantly advocate for ourselves in a way that is truthful. They can be well-meaning and still misrepresent us because they just don't understand our circumstances like we do, because we're living in our own skin. We're living in our own mind. We understand our victories, and we also understand our areas of caution when we're honest with ourselves. In active use, it's impossible to be honest with yourself. In active use, you're going to always make excuses, and you're always going to take other people's inventory, and you're always going to find a way to blame somebody else for what you're doing. I have not seen one person in active use that doesn't do that. It's massively frustrating when you're trying to support somebody in that mode, because in fact, you're probably going to be the one of the ones that's blamed, and probably unfairly. But if you're supporting somebody, so this is the other side of it. If you are a support for somebody as they're going through this system, understand that's how they're thinking, and just be available when they're ready to engage. Don't push on the issue. Be available when they're ready to engage. And if you do agree to support somebody, it is your obligation to try to figure out as much as you can about that person to help them get through their obstacles and their barriers. I've been fortunate to be involved in a number of people's lives that are working on their journey. And it's been one of the biggest blessings I've had. Early on in recovery, I heard through the AA programs that they say, oh, you keep your recovery by giving it back. I'm like, blah, 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 nice bumper sticker. There's all these little things they say in AA, and I get sick of hearing the cliches because it doesn't seem heartfelt to me. And then I started to go through the process and realized, holy cow, I do feel stronger when I'm giving back the lessons that I've learned. Even on this video, I'm more invigorated by this notion of personal advocacy, because I'm doing a video before you, and I want you to understand how much I believe in this. I've had a very powerful point today. So this is something that's come to me, and a lot of the revelation has come over the last week or so, because Sam and I have gone through some tremendous victories over the last couple weeks. But the last week in particular, we've seen the fruits of her labor. I've seen the elevation of her life, and I've seen this high performing person come back to life as she's laid down her arms and has professing to have retired from the street. For somebody that loves her very much, what a powerful declaration. And I'll be here to support her through that journey. But for myself, I've got some victory stories coming as well. I was at my treatment provider today because I have to go through a package to submit through the Department of Motor Vehicles to attempt to get my license back after 7 years. It's very confidence building when you go in and do a urine screen and know for sure there's nothing in that urine screen. It's kind of like you walk in and say, what do you want me to pee on? You want to pee in the plant? I'll pee in your coffee. Wherever you want me to pee, I'll do it. Test it all. I'm good. Seriously. No, when you go through these programs, it's like when you go into it knowing full well that you're doing the right thing, it's such a confidence builder, because it's one more piece of evidence that what I've declared is actually true. Now I've got one more day to go because they screwed up my schedule. I've got to go on the 6th and finish up one more thing for them. And then I submit to New York State to do something that's been an awful long time coming. And hopefully they give me permission on the other side. But the reason I'm having this conversation with you about advocacy is because I'm not here if people didn't advocate for me. But I can tell you right now, I'm not here if I didn't advocate for myself. My original sentencing, I would have just gotten out this year out of prison. All that time would have been in prison. And I would have been definitely a different human being. I'm thankful for how my life has gone. I'm thankful for the down. I'm thankful for all the bad seasons, because it's made me who I am today. And I have stronger fortitude than I would have had before. I'm thankful for a lot of the journey that I've been on. Much of it's been painful. This last year is probably one of the more difficult years of my life. Candidly, I think this year was harder to deal with than even in my worst use, because it wasn't all just me struggling. It wasn't just my mental health being tired. It was somebody near me struggling too. And that's tough. It's tough when we're trying to deal with a lot of stuff. But when you advocate for yourself and you're your best soldier, and you make sure that you keep your promises legit, and you follow through with them all, and you make those promises in the first place, there's something powerful about standing up in the room and being so bold that you say, I will do this. And then coming back 6 months later and people like it and they go, man, you did do that. That's a powerful statement. And people do have their eyes on you when you make those declarations, because they're expecting you to fail. And you get to have a little chip on your shoulder and say, I told you so. Why not? Why not have that chip? Appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for tuning in the channel. Please like and subscribe. Don't forget that. If you got comments on this video, I'd love to hear them. You can shoot me a message at chris@chrisandretro.com if you want to. If you got anything going on in your life that you need some support with. But I'm so thankful for this show. I'm thankful to be back going on the show again. My TikTok has been being messed with by TikTok a little bit. They keep saying I'm violating community standards I've had 4 videos pulled down from community standards, and I'm not sure why. They're all motivational quotes. For whatever reason, and they say I peel them, they say they're going to reinstate them and just never do. So I'm not sure what's going on with TikTok, but I do try to put something daily out over there. If you just need a little shot in the arm with some quotes and stuff like that might make you feel a little bit better. Format's definitely different than what I'm doing here. And sometimes I do daily journals, which are short little videos, usually 2 to 4 minutes long. So check that platform out too. This is the one that really is going to give you more long form videos. I appreciate you guys so much. And between now and the next time we talk, I'm going to stay out of trouble. I hope you do too.